This your boy, The Unknown Price. Who doesn't like to curl up on the couch with a blanket, a cup of Earl Grey, and a good book? Perhaps you'd like to read Nicholas Sparks, or that lady that writes about the alphabet and murder. But maybe, just maybe, you're the kind of person that likes things just a tad bit darker. I'm not talking Stephen King or Clive Barker here, but the really, really dark stuff. The taboo, the forbidden tomes of old. So whether you're just a little edgelord, a goth, or aspiring witch looking to summon demonic entities in order to topple the patriarchy, Attack Da Nite's got you, presenting the 5 most cursed books in history. Number 5, the Necronomicon. What kind of list of evil books wouldn't include this classic? Popularized by H.P. Lovecraft, the Necronomicon is believed by many to just be a fictional creation of the horror fantasy writer. But then there are those that insist that Lovecraft had found the grimoire in his grandfather's library, where the nerd spent most of his youth, and it was exposure to this book that led Lovecraft to be such a supremely weird guy all throughout his life. As Lovecraft wrote, the original book, titled Al-Azif, was discovered by a man named Al-Hazrad. He was led by a voice believing it to be Yog-Sothoth to a cave where he found the Book of the Dead inside. The book eventually ruined Al-Hazrad's mental state, causing him to die a rather untimely and mysterious death. After the book had been unleashed on the earth, various learned men attempted to access its forbidden knowledge, often opening portals and summoning entities, ultimately resulting in even more untimely demise. The book was over time translated to Greek by the scholar Theodorus Philetus before he disappeared, presumably into a realm oozing with eldritch horror. So eventually some people stepped in order to suppress the book, because that's all they could do, as most evil books just simply cannot be destroyed or even contained. It's said that the famous occultist John Dee had gotten his hands on the tome at one point, mentioning it in his footnotes. The book still has a place in popular culture and comic books and films like the Evil Dead series, and since it's uncertain if the book actually existed or not, many occultists have attempted to write their own Necronomicons, the most popular one being the Simon Necronomicon, written by Peter Levenda and published in 1977. Number 4, the Book of Sawyer, a 16th century grimoire written by an unknown author. This book was considered a goner until it was rediscovered in 1994. The book contains magical spells and incantations for summoning all sorts of evil, like demons, malicious spirits, and maybe even Henry Kissinger. As well as pages on demonology, the book also contains various musings on astrology, so it can tell you that if you're a Capricorn, you better be on the lookout for a certain Scorpio. John Dee supposedly got his hands on this book toward the end of his life, or rather it had gotten its book hands on him. He spent many years in an attempt to decipher its passages in cryptic text to no avail. A certain page containing a block of 36 random-ass Latin letters supposedly drove Dee to madness, even causing him to summon an angel for help with deciphering its meaning. But the angel was like, "Nah, dog." Ultimately, it would be this madness that drove Dee to die. If you need any more help in understanding why this book would be deemed evil, the word Sawyer is the inversion of the word holy in ancient Greek, and everyone knows that anytime something is reversed, it's very scary. Number 3, the Lesser Key of Solomon. The Lesser Key of Solomon, also referred to as Lemagedon Clavicula Solomonus, first appeared in the 17th century. Like the Book of Sawyer, it has no author, but many have speculated that much of it was written by Solomon, the guy who wanted to cut the baby in half. Pretty metal. Even more metal, the book is supposed to contain evocations for 72 demons. Why 72? Why not? When you have 72 demons, one can imagine that some are going to be lesser than others, resulting in some pretty weak-ass sounding demons, like one whose name roughly translates to President Amy. Besides John Dee, the Lesser Key of Solomon was also a popular subject of another famous occultist and power bottom, Aleister Crowley, who commissioned an illustrated copy of the book in English in 1904. One can only imagine that it was a huge hit with the evangelical crowd at the time. Number 2, Liberol and Psychonaut. Unlike most of the grimoires on this list, Liberol and Psychonaut was written in 1987 by Peter J. Carroll, considered the most definitive text on the relatively new form of magical practices called chaos magic. While other forms of magic might have relied on summoning demons and entities from established theologies, chaos magic utilizes psychological principles by focusing on entities created by the practitioner, as the rituals are often reverse engineered. Chaos magic has gained some recognition in popular culture thanks to endorsements from famous comic book artists and weirdos Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, who have both not only referenced it in interviews and their work, but Grant Morrison has actually structured it into the narratives of his stories. Chaos magic sounds pretty dark a lot of the time and has some pretty wicked, kick-ass imagery associated with it. However, most of it reads like Deepak Chopra by way of Trent Reznor. That aside, its break with tradition has made it not only an enemy of the evangelical crowd, who are prone to raise a fuss about anything to do with magic, whether it be the Satanic Bible or Harry Potter, but also to fellow occultists who feel that it's treading dangerous territory due to its iconoclastic nature. Number 1, The Grim Evangelium. This book might be the most mysterious on the list because it seems to only exist through secondhand information. The story of the grimoire says that it was written by a coal miner named Daniel Henley, who participated in the strike on the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company in 1914. An anti-strike militia teamed with the National Guard to attack those on strike. The night before the Colorado National Guard unleashed fire on the miners and their families, the miners' camps had been mysteriously set on fire, where Henley lost his wife and daughter. Afterwards, Henley, a surprisingly well-read immigrant from Ireland, disappeared the next day before the massacre of 21 people, orchestrated by the asshole John D. Rockefeller Jr. Henley would never be seen again. No one knew where he went. But there were those that said Henley had heard of a nearby vortex in the area. Some believe that Henley went there to find a way to bring his wife and daughter back to him by summoning mystical forces. While this whole thing might seem odd enough, it gets really weird when you begin to learn that authors like John Dee and others, even before him, mentioned Daniel Henley's Grim Evangelium in notes and anecdotes, even though the grimoire had been written 200 years later and sometimes more in other circumstances. It's said that the book appears before people at random, while others have suggested that it's actually unknowingly summoned by people seeking some thing, whether it be closure, fortune, or revenge. Therefore, it's been stated by some that the book is more a living entity, as it allows no copies, photographs, or recordings to be made in its likeness. Those that have came into contact with the book and lived to tell about it have stated that it first appears as a very dusty old tome full of alien characters that transform into the reader's native language right before their very eyes. Whether or not the Grim Evangelium exists remains one of the most persistent mysteries throughout time, and if it does, what purpose does it serve? This has been the Unknown Price with Attack Da Nite, with the 5 most evil books throughout time. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe to get more from our channel, and always remember to attack Da Nite.